The chamber of the Galactic Council was a monument to ancient authority, vast enough to swallow entire cities, its crystalline arches refracting the light of distant suns into spectral bands that painted the floor. In that hall, where every major species of the Orion arm sent its envoys, silence held as Councillor Vorith rose from his place. His scaled frame, tall and ridged with the years of service, gleamed faintly beneath the refracted light. His voice, rough yet deliberate, carried without the need for amplification. "Do not underestimate the humans," he said, his gaze sweeping the tiers where alien dignitaries reclined in comfort. "If you insist on confrontation, you will pay for it with more than fleets and soldiers. You will pay with the unraveling of empires." The words drew a ripple of unease, though most present wore contempt more than fear. Kaler, the avian senator draped in ceremonial silks, leaned forward on his perch, feathers rustling with irritation. His beak clicked once before he spoke. "Your obsession with these primates has grown tedious, Vorith. They are a species scarcely a century into the stars, still nursing wounds from their own endless tribal wars. What threat could they possibly pose to civilizations that have charted the heavens for millennia?" Across the chamber, the hulking form of Warlord Threxen shifted with a predatory grin. His mammalian bulk, armored even in the supposedly neutral halls of the Council, radiated aggression. "I welcome the chance to test them. A frontier skirmish, perhaps. Let us see if these humans bleed any differently from the rest." Vorith's narrow eyes hardened. "You mistake resilience for fragility, Threxen. They have bled more than any of us and yet they endure. They thrive in places where our kind wither. They fight without certainty of victory, and that makes them dangerous. History should teach you that no species can fight humanity on their own terms and expect to win." He gestured sharply, talons clicking against the transparent podium. "Recall the Battle of Signy. A colony defended by miners, farmers and scavenged ships, yet the invading fleet was driven off. Not by superior technology but by will and cunning. Draven Hale, the lone human present, sat calmly through the exchange. His uniform was unadorned, his posture disciplined, and his silence more unsettling than any argument. Some of the younger delegates whispered uneasily whenever his eyes passed over them, for there was nothing pleading in his expression, no attempt to justify his people. He did not deny Vorith's warnings nor defend them against the sneers of Kaler and Threxen. He only observed, as though recording names for a future reckoning. Kaler laughed, the sound brittle. "A single battle proves nothing. Every rising race boasts of one desperate victory against a stronger foe. In time they bend the knee as all do. The Council must not tremble because Vorith wishes to flatter human pride." The chamber swelled with approving murmurs. The dismissal was infectious, soothing the Council's collective unease. For many, the idea of fearing a species so new to the interstellar stage felt absurd, even insulting. They saw only humanity's fragmented governments, their still-scarred world, their lack of a unified fleet. To them, humans were loud, rash, and insignificant. Threxen rose to his full height, voice booming. "I propose we do more than ignore Vorith's endless warnings. Let us act. Close their trade lanes, seize their outlying colonies, and demonstrate the futility of resistance. When their supplies wither and their worlds starve, they will crawl to us willingly." He sneered toward Hale. "Your kind has survived only because greater civilizations have tolerated your noise. That tolerance ends." Vorith slammed a claw against the podium, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Do you hear yourselves? You speak of strangling a species that has done nothing but defend its right to exist. Do you think they will not resist? Do you think their defiance will not spread like fire through the cracks in your empires? You imagine conquest, but what you will inherit is an eternal war you cannot contain." Hale finally stood. The suddenness of the motion drew every gaze. His voice was quiet, but it carried, sharp as a blade drawn in silence. "Councillor Vorith speaks truth. Humanity does not seek this war you tempt, but we will not kneel. You mistake our patience for weakness, our silence for submission. If you force this path, you will discover what your arrogance has blinded you to, that humans do not break." He paused, eyes passing over Kaler, then Threxen. "We endure." For a moment, genuine unease rippled through the chamber. Even Kaler's feathers shifted with discomfort, though he quickly masked it with disdain. "Empty bravado. Words are wind." The Council vote commenced, each delegation casting their stance. Despite Vorith's fervor and Hale's warning, the outcome was inevitable. A majority supported Threxen's proposal to contain humanity through force. The chamber's crystalline walls echoed with the official decree, a sound more final than any gavel. The humans would be tested, suppressed, brought into the fold, or so the council believed. Vorith sank into his seat, his ridged hands clasped tightly together. His jaw flexed, but he spoke no further. The vote was cast, the folly sealed. He alone seemed to recognize the weight of what had just transpired, the storm that now loomed beyond the horizon. Hale remained standing even as the chamber emptied, still and unmoving while delegates filed past him with expressions ranging from smugness to unease. When the last had gone, he turned slightly toward Vorith. The human's voice dropped to a tone meant for one pair of ears alone. You did what you could. They will remember your words, though perhaps too late. Vorith regarded him with the weary gaze of one who had watched countless wars burn through the stars. Do not mistake my warning for hope, human. I have seen civilizations collapse under far lesser flames. When this begins, none will be spared. Hale's mouth tightened, not in defiance but in grim acknowledgement. Then it seems we share a burden neither of us asked for. Without another word, he strode from the chamber, his figure swallowed by the radiant arches. Vorith lingered, the vast hall now cavernous and cold. He could already hear the future's echo in his mind, fleets shattered, worlds burned, and the relentless march of a species too stubborn to yield. His final thought, bitter and sharp, clung to him like a curse. The council had been warned. They had laughed. And soon they would learn what it meant to ignore humanity. The frontier colony of Eos orbited a pale blue sun, its settlements carved into the ochre cliffs and domes rising like beads of glass above the sands. To its inhabitants, it had become home, a fragile beacon of human tenacity far from Earth. To Warlord Threxen it was little more than bait. His fleet of warships blotted out the stars as they descended, their black hulls casting shadows across the colony's surface. From the bridge of his flagship, he watched the evacuation unfold with mounting disdain. Civilians moved with precision, forming columns toward shuttles, no chaos, no visible fear. He growled, tusks bared. Strange. They scatter like soldiers, not prey. His adjutant grunted in acknowledgement but said nothing more, unwilling to stoke the warlord's temper. In the council's grand chamber, the decision had been made. Humanity would be broken, their ambitions chained before they could threaten established powers. Threxen had claimed the honor of striking first, convinced that crushing a single outlying colony would demonstrate human weakness. Yet as his cannons fired warning shots into the desert, he felt the faint stirrings of unease. The humans did not panic. They withdrew deliberately like hunters drawing an opponent into a trap. His instincts told him something was amiss, but his pride smothered the thought. Draven Hale returned to Earth as the first reports of the siege reached the inner systems. He stood before the Unified Command Council, a chamber smaller and more austere than the Council of Species, but filled with men hardened by war. There was no splendor here, only steel walls and the scent of cold air recycled through military filters. Admiral Cole Varick, broad-shouldered and weathered by decades of service, leaned forward on his elbows. His voice was gravel yet steady. They've made their move. Eos was never the prize. They want to measure us, see if our people scatter when pressed. His eyes locked on Hale. What did they say in that chamber? Did they give you anything more than threats? Hale's expression hardly shifted. They gave us their measure of arrogance. They believe their age grants them superiority, that our resilience is nothing but noise. Vorith tried to warn them. No one listened. He paused, his tone cooling further. They will not stop with Eos. This is the first step toward a war they think they can win. The room darkened with tension. Generals and strategists traded glances, their faces lit only by the holographic map that displayed the shifting front lines. Varick spoke again, measured and calm. We cannot fight this war as they expect. Their fleets are larger, their infrastructure older and more refined. If we meet them head-on, they'll drown us. We do what we've always done, turn weakness into advantage. Force them into battles they don't understand. He tapped the glowing map, highlighting asteroid belts and nebulae. Space favors the patient predator. Let them think us weak. When they press, we'll cut them apart piece by piece. The men around him nodded, not in blind obedience but in grim recognition. Humanity had never possessed superior numbers, only an instinct for survival honed by centuries of conflict. Hale remained silent, but something in his gaze hardened. He had seen the contempt in Kaler's voice, the hunger in Threxen's. He knew they would underestimate every move, and that underestimation was the only weapon humanity needed. Back at Eos, Threxen's bombardments tore into empty domes. The humans had abandoned the visible settlements, retreating into the canyons and caverns. Frustrated, he ordered his soldiers to scour the surface, to drag the colonists into the open. Instead of submission, they met resistance in the shadows. Miners wielding improvised explosives collapsed tunnels on armored patrols. Farmers guided their attackers into ravines rigged with hidden charges. Every engagement was costly, not in numbers alone but in morale. His men reported civilians fighting as if born for war, refusing capture, embracing death over surrender. Threxon's contempt curdled into anger. "This is not victory," he snarled, slamming a clawed fist into his command table. "This is defiance." What unsettled him most was their coordination. He had expected chaos, but the resistance was orchestrated with precision, delaying him at every turn. Above the colony, his fleet began to experience interference in communications. At first dismissed as technical error, it grew into deliberate sabotage. Human drones, small and expendable, slipped between his cruisers, planting devices that emitted false signals, turning formations against themselves. In one harrowing moment, a destroyer fired upon its ally, convinced it was an enemy craft. Threxon's fury boiled, yet behind it lurked the quiet recognition of something he dared not voice. These humans were fighting a war unlike any he had seen. When word reached the Council of the delays at Eos, Kaler dismissed them with a sharp wave of his winged hand. Minor setbacks. Threxon enjoys dramatics, but no colony of farmers can resist indefinitely. Vorith sat silently, his gaze fixed on the floor, unwilling to waste more words on ears that would not hear. He knew how this story would end, though the Council still wrapped itself in denial. They mistook every human tactic as desperation, never grasping the pattern of deliberate design. Weeks passed. The colony of Eos lay half-ruined, but it had not fallen. For every strike Threxon delivered, the humans adapted, countering with ingenuity. His reports grew more clipped, his once booming proclamations now shadowed by irritation. At last, in a fit of pride, he ordered a full-scale assault, driving his forces into the heart of the canyon system where the last resistance had gathered. The trap closed with merciless precision. Explosive charges rigged into the very rock face shattered cliffs, collapsing upon his armored divisions. Hidden artillery emplacements, salvaged from mining equipment, cut through advancing lines. Human fighters, lean and unyielding, swarmed from the tunnels, striking with rifles and blades in close quarters that nullified his superior armor. It was not a battle but a lesson, one written in blood and fire. Threxon retreated, his pride battered as much as his forces. He had taken the colony, but at a cost so high it reeked of defeat. Hundreds of ships lost, tens of thousands dead, and yet the humans endured. In the aftermath, as his fleet limped away, his mind wrestled with an unwelcome truth. Vorith had been right. Humanity did not crumble when pressed. They sharpened into something deadlier. Still, his pride refused surrender. He swore vengeance, vowing to return with overwhelming force. The humans had humiliated him, and for that he would see their worlds burned. On Earth, Admiral Varric reviewed the fragmented reports from Eos with an unshakable calm. He saw beyond the immediate struggle, past the losses and the narrow escapes. He saw proof. Humanity could not only survive the Council's aggression, they could make them bleed. Hale stood beside him, arms folded, voice low. "They will come again. Harder, larger, angrier." Varric nodded, his weathered face carved into determination. "Good. Let them bring everything they have. We'll show them what endurance truly means." Thus the first clash ended not with submission but with defiance. Eos smoldered, scarred yet unbroken, its ruins a monument to humanity's refusal to yield. Threxon returned to the Council with ashes in his claws, a hollow victor carrying the weight of failure. The storm he had hoped to unleash was only beginning, and in the silence between battles, the galaxy held its breath. Humanity had answered the first blow not with fear but with fire. The chamber of the Galactic Council was heavy with discontent, its vaulted walls no longer echoing with easy laughter. Reports from Eos had spread across the member worlds, and though Threxon returned bearing the charred remnants of victory, no one could ignore the scale of his losses. His fleet, once a symbol of invincibility, had been reduced to wounded fragments limping back into port. He roared before the assembly, claiming sabotage, claiming treachery, yet beneath his fury, there was a tremor of something that could not be hidden. Fear. Kaler sought to calm the chamber, spreading his wings in a display of authority. "The humans will fall in time. A single costly campaign is no proof of strength. What they accomplished was desperation, nothing more." But the words did not carry the confidence they once had, and even his allies shifted uneasily. Vorith, seated in the shadows, did not speak. He only watched the council unravel in slow motion, his silence more damning than any speech. On Earth, the unified command was in ceaseless motion. Men who had once been farmers, engineers, or miners were repurposed into officers and tacticians, their skills reshaped into tools of survival. Admiral Varric stood at the center of it all, commanding not only fleets but the transformation of society itself. He saw potential in every pair of hands, every mind capable of adapting. Workshops became armories, orbital shipyards turned into hives of innovation. He demanded versatility and his men delivered. Drones were fitted with stealth plating cobbled together from mining alloys. Civilian transports were converted into troop carriers bristling with rail cannons. Even the old hulls of decommissioned freighters were reborn as explosive-laden traps. Humanity did not wait for war to come, it prepared to meet it on terms no other species had ever considered. Draven Hale became the voice of humanity across these preparations, though he wielded no official rank within the command structure. His presence alone commanded attention, his calm pronouncements shaping morale as much as strategy. Where Varric dealt in deployments and tactics, Hale spoke to the spirit of men who had once doubted. In mess halls and training yards, his words carried like a whisper turned into conviction. "We are not fighting for conquest," he reminded them, voice steady. "We are fighting because they believe we will yield. Let them believe it. Every moment they underestimate us is a moment we seize." His restraint, his refusal to indulge in fury, unnerved even his own allies. It was not passion that fueled him but certainty. That calm, more than any speech, became the iron at humanity's core. When the Council finally sanctioned escalation, it was no longer a matter of isolated colonies. Entire coalitions of fleets were dispatched toward human systems, vast armadas representing half a dozen species. Threxon volunteered to lead once more, his pride unhealed, while Kaler pressed for economic blockades to tighten the noose. The strategy was meant to suffocate humanity on every front: military, economic, psychological. Yet in every engagement the pattern repeated. Humans yielded ground deliberately, never clinging to positions of no value, always retreating in ways that drew their enemies deeper. Alien commanders boasted of victories until they realized their supply lines had been cut, their fleets stranded in dead systems with nothing but hostile fire closing in. One battle in particular became legend among both sides. The Battle of Mers Rift unfolded in the shadow of a fractured moon, its debris forming a treacherous field of rock and ice. Alien fleets surged forward with overwhelming numbers, certain they had cornered a fragmented human squadron. Instead, the rift became a labyrinth of death. Human vessels darted between debris with uncanny precision, luring enemies into collisions or ambushes. Mines disguised as drifting rocks tore apart capital ships. Frigates emerged from the shadows only to vanish again, leaving chaos in their wake. By the time the enemy realized the trap, half their fleet was crippled, the survivors fleeing in disarray. What they had mistaken for desperation had been design all along. Admiral Varric studied each engagement with meticulous care, his eyes never straying from the broader war. To him, every victory was only a lesson, every loss a step toward refinement. "They learn slowly," he told Hale as they reviewed the scattered reports. "We learn quickly. That's the difference. They believe their age makes them wise, but it has made them rigid. They can't change as fast as we can." Hale nodded, though his reply was softer. "They will realize it eventually. When they do, they'll stop underestimating us. That's when this war will become most dangerous." In the Council, divisions deepened. Some envoys began to echo Voritha's warnings, no longer so eager to mock. They argued that humanity's resistance was not anomaly but inevitability. Others, like Kaler, doubled down, refusing to admit error, insisting that escalation would solve what hesitation could not. Threxon, humiliated by repeated losses masked as victories, pressed for a full assault on Earth itself. "Crush the root and the branches wither," he thundered, his tusks bared in the chamber's light. Vorith finally spoke, voice as cold as stone. "And if you fail? What then, Threxon? What price will you pay when you discover the root is fire, not wood?" The silence that followed was heavier than any argument, though the Council's pride ensured the vote fell in Threxon's favor. As preparations for the next campaign gathered pace, Hale stood once more in the Council chamber, this time as a spectator to their bickering. He said little, yet his silence unnerved them as much as his words had before. His eyes betrayed no anger, no desperation, only a steady watchfulness, as though he already knew how the story would unfold. Those who mocked him found their voices faltering beneath his gaze. Those who feared him found their fear growing. The human envoy did not need to argue. His very presence had become a quiet reminder that the warnings had been ignored, and the consequences were already bleeding into reality. Back on Earth, Varric prepared for what he knew would come. He spoke before his officers in a briefing room stripped of ornament, the glow of tactical maps reflecting in his eyes. They will bring everything this time. They think Earth is the key, that breaking us at our core will end the war. They don't understand yet. He leaned forward, his voice lowering, a rasp that carried to every corner of the room. We don't fight to win swiftly. We fight to endure. We'll drag them into every canyon, every corridor, every shadow of space. And when they think the war is over, that's when it will have only begun. The officers responded not with cheers but with grim nods, the kind of acknowledgement born of shared inevitability. They knew what was coming and they knew the cost. But none flinched. Humanity's strength was not in numbers or technology, but in the refusal to break, the willingness to endure suffering longer than any foe imagined possible. The Council, blinded by arrogance, set its course for escalation, convinced the next strike would end the conflict. Humanity, shaped by struggle, prepared to embrace the storm. As fleets assembled across the stars, a tension spread like a silent current. Both sides knew the next clash would not be a skirmish nor a test. It would be a crucible. And in that crucible, something irreversible would be forged. The armadas of half a dozen empires gathered at the edge of Sol, their vessels arranged in vast formations that blotted out the stars. Threxen stood upon the command dais of his flagship, tusked jaw clenched in grim determination. This would be his redemption, his final proof that humans were no more than stubborn vermin awaiting extermination. Around him, alien officers barked orders, their voices sharp and eager for conquest. Yet beneath the bluster ran an undercurrent of unease, for even the most zealous had heard the stories. Fleets vanishing in asteroid fields, outposts consumed by sabotage, commanders humiliated in skirmishes that should have been certain victories. Still, the Council had demanded Earth's fall. If humanity was to endure, it must endure against this tide. On Earth, Admiral Varric watched the approaching fleets from orbit, his weathered face lit by the glow of tactical projections. To his staff, he appeared as immovable as the mountains of his birth, a man carved from stone and tempered by loss. He spoke little, issuing only the necessary commands, his voice calm where others might have faltered. They will strike with everything, he said, eyes fixed on the encroaching armada. Let them. We have prepared for this moment since the first shot at Eos. Around him, men who had once been civilians now wore uniforms with quiet pride, their hands steady over consoles, their gazes locked on the task before them. Humanity did not tremble in the face of annihilation. They leaned into it. Draven Hale moved through the underground shelters of Earth, speaking not to admirals or strategists but to those who would hold rifles in rubble-strewn streets. His words were not fiery proclamations but measured truths. You have already shown them who you are, he told clusters of young men, mechanics and miners turned soldiers. They believe this will be our breaking. Instead it will be their unmaking. Fight not for glory but because they think we will yield. Show them we never will. His calm steadied nerves more than any oath of victory. When he left each gathering, men straightened their shoulders, gripping their weapons as if they had always been meant for them. The first salvos tore into Earth's orbital defenses, alien cannons vomiting fire into the black. Yet the humans had not placed their faith in static lines. Orbital platforms exploded, yes, but each one carried payloads that seeded minefields into the void. The sky became a killing ground of drifting charges and hidden traps. Alien cruisers, advancing confidently, found themselves ensnared in webs of detonations. The debris of shattered vessels became cover for human frigates darting between wreckage. The battle was no clean contest of fleets. It was chaos sculpted into a weapon, the kind of war only humans could wage. Threxen snarled as reports poured in, ships lost, squadrons scattered. He ordered a direct thrust toward Earth, determined to smash through the chaos. His fleet pushed hard, battering aside resistance with brute force, until the blue-green sphere filled his view. Burn it, he commanded, tusks gleaming in the light of explosions. Let them choke on fire. His cannons rained destruction upon the upper atmosphere, streaks of light carving scars across the sky. But as his gaze sharpened, he saw what he had missed. From the planet's surface, vast railguns rose from concealed silos, launching slugs with such force they pierced capital ships in a single shot. His pride faltered as vessel after vessel split apart under fire from below. On the ground, humanity's last line held firm. Cities became fortresses, streets turned into ambush corridors. Every ruined block was manned by fighters who knew death might come in minutes, yet none faltered. Alien troops who made landfall found themselves mired in relentless resistance. Civilians fought alongside soldiers, wielding weapons cobbled from scrap and stolen tech. For every man who fell, another rose, unyielding. The invaders had expected terror. They found resolve. Varric directed the battle like a conductor, each order precise, each sacrifice deliberate. He dispatched wings of fighters to bait enemy formations into the densest minefields, sent convoys of drones to flood enemy sensors with false signatures. Losses were immense, but each one bought another opening. His staff looked to him with awe, for even in the midst of ruin, he exuded certainty. "They will break before we do," he murmured, more to himself than anyone. "That is the truth they cannot comprehend." As the battle raged, Threxen launched his final gambit, a direct strike at Earth's command centers. He led his elite aboard a massive carrier, its hull bristling with weapons. From its heart, boarding parties descended, crashing into strongholds with thunderous force. Yet instead of crumbling, the humans surged to meet them. In steel corridors and shattered bunkers, men fought hand to hand, their ferocity shocking even seasoned invaders. Threxen himself strode into the fray, claws rending through armored foes, his bellows shaking walls. It was there he met Admiral Varric. The two clashed not as symbols of nations but as men bound to the fate of their kind. Varric's blade, forged from scavenged alloys, met Threxen's talons in a storm of sparks. The warlord's strength was monstrous, each blow enough to cripple, yet Varric endured, his defense unyielding. Around them the battle howled, rifles blazing, men screaming, but in that moment the war seemed distilled to two figures locked in struggle. Threxen roared in disbelief as the older man refused to fall. "You are nothing compared to us," he bellowed. Varric's reply was a ragged growl. "And yet here we stand." With a final surge, he drove his blade beneath the warlord's armor, piercing deep. Threxen staggered, tusks gnashing in denial, before crashing to the floor with a thunder that shook the chamber. Word of Threxen's death spread like wildfire, rippling through alien ranks already strained by losses. Cohesion faltered, formations broke, and what had been an invasion became a retreat. Human ships harried their withdrawal, turning desperation into rout. By the time the surviving fleets limped from Sol, the Council's Grand Armada had been reduced to wreckage, its pride broken upon the anvil of Earth. When the guns at last fell silent, Hale stood before the remnants of the Galactic Council. He did not shout, nor did he gloat. His voice was measured, every word deliberate. "We did not seek this war. We warned you what it would cost. You did not listen. You thought us fragile, yet it is you who lie shattered. Humanity does not triumph because we are stronger or wiser. We triumph because we endure." The chamber was silent, every envoy unwilling to meet his gaze. Only Vorith held his head high, though his eyes were heavy with the sorrow of vindication. Admiral Varric returned to Earth not as a man who had won, but as one who had survived. He walked among ruins, greeting men who had stood to the last, their eyes hollow yet unbroken. He knew the war was not over, that grudges would fester in the hearts of alien empires. But he also knew the tide had shifted forever. Humanity had proven itself, not by conquest but by refusing defeat. In the silence that followed, the galaxy trembled. The Council's warning had been ignored, and the price had been paid in blood and ruin. Now every star bore witness to the truth. Mankind could not be broken. The age of underestimating humans was over, and those who had mocked their resilience now carried the scars of their folly. The storm had passed, but its echo promised a future forever changed. Humanity had endured, and in enduring they had conquered. Enjoyed the story? Hit like, share, and subscribe for more epic HFY sci-fi.